Ready? Fire, enthusiasm. Hey guys, welcome back to Throwing Wrenches Garage. I'm Tom.
And I'm tired.
It's been a long day. We're hitting you at the end of a day, and I'm kind of dragging Declan down here to get this done because I really want to sort of get into this job. It's still unclear as to whether or not we complete this job in this sitting or whether this is me coming back down here a couple of nights. But we do want to be able to change the valve stem seals on this motor. So I did get the tool that I was looking for in, and we got two different valve seals, because I believe there's one kind of valve seal on here, or valve stem seal on here, but there may be another. They were cheap enough, so I just bought both kinds of seals, both the positive lock and the umbrella. So we'll see what's in here and what we need to move to, but we should have the parts no matter what. And I did buy a Proform spring remover. So it's the type that mounts to the actual stud. So there's sort of three kinds of these removers. One that mounts to this stud and sort of leverages off the stud to compress the spring. There's another one that's a little hand crank that goes right on the spring, and you sort of crank it down by hand with a knob. And then you can also get some that work better with the heads off. And they're sort of like a C-clamp that you can use. So we're going to use the rocker arm style for now to get this done. All right, so that's that. Let's start to get on to parts and pieces. This is your magnet. So what's going to happen is when I push down on this, it's going to compress the spring. And these two little pieces, the keepers, are going to make themselves present. You need to grab them off of here with the magnet and place them in here.
Okay.
One at a time. No rush. Okay. So this is going to hit on again. So let's get this. So Declan's going to come in here with a little magnetic stick once I lift this in. Okay, grab that keeper, put it in the bin. Grab the next keeper. There you go. All right, so keeper's off of that valve. We can let this back up. That spring comes right off. Now let's take a look at what we got here. All right, so these are the umbrella type seals. Oh yeah. Oh, that is all rotted up. So the O-ring that is supposed to help keep this in place is just shot. And it's hard and brittle. And it just broke apart trying to get it off there. So I don't know if you can see that grossness, but that's done. Now we should be able to get this off of there. All right, so see the difference? Feel that. Hard. Now feel that.
Oh.
Yeah. big difference. This is the old one. Really can't even squeeze it. This is the new one. Squishy. All right, that's on there. So now our next step is we're going to put the keepers back in. So I'm going to compress this for you, and then you're going to put that in. Now it's the tapered end that goes in first.
Like on the bottom?
Yeah, so it should be pointed like an arrow at the engine, basically. So you'll put in one side, and then you'll put in the other side. So we're replacing the valve stem seals, which is like a tongue twister for me. I keep on screwing it up. Just valve seals are different. Valve stem seals are what we're replacing today. Basically, where the valve stem goes through the head, there's exposure that has to oil that's working its way through the head along the valve train. That oil is necessary to keep the valve train moving, but we don't want that oil seeping along the stem down into the combustion chamber and polluting that chamber with oil. That's what's happening right now, at least as far as we can see. And this is a pretty easy thing to fix. There's two kinds of seals, two main kinds of seals that you can get into here. One of them is a positive lock seal, and the other one is an umbrella seal. The umbrella is a lot more common for this type of motor, so that's what we were expecting to see. We ordered both just in case. And what we want to do is change those out to keep that oil from seeping down along that valve stem. That's what we think is happening to this motor. So in order to do that, what we need to be able to do is remove these valve springs and then get them off, and then pull off the old seals. This is the old umbrella seal, and the old O-ring that sits above that. Take those both off and then replace them with new ones. It's a pretty simple action to do piece by piece, but there's a couple of things that we got to look out for. One of which is that the keepers that cling to the valve stem at the top and actually hold the spring in place, they get kind of married to the valve stem over time, and they don't really want to separate. So when you go and put the compressor on the valve spring and try to compress the spring, the valve moves with it, which we don't want. We want that valve to stay, and we want the spring to move. So we're going to have to do a little pounding on these things with a dead blow hammer just to kind of shake that loose and shock it. The other piece you have to be aware of is you don't want that valve to slide down into the combustion chamber. So what we'll do is we'll rotate the engine rotating assembly to get it to close to top dead center on each cylinder that we're working on. And then we're also going to use the air fitting from our leak down tester kit and my compressor and throw some compressed air in there. That compressed air will help keep those valves in place. And even if it slips because you have it in top dead center, that valve isn't going to go all the way down into the cylinder and get lost, forcing us to take the heads off. So those are the things that we're going to go through. It's a little bit of a process to make sure you get everything set up correctly. But once you do, it's pretty easy to go through. I'm cheating now because we already went through one bank, which you guys are about to see. But that made it a little bit easier for us to understand what we're getting into, and then I'll get into the next bank. The last thing that we're going to do before we wrap all this up, once we change all these, is we're going to go ahead and set the lash on all of these cylinders, on all these valves. All of these rocker arms need to be tightened down to a pretty specific spec to make sure that there's not excessive play in them, so they won't rattle and clank and everything runs as it's supposed to. So that'll be the last step that we go through. We could do this on this set run. In fact, if you're going to do it sort of properly and kind of systematically, what you would do is change the seals on one cylinder and then set the lash on those springs or those valves and then move on to the next. We're just doing all the seals at once just to kind of keep one operation at flow, and then we'll go through and set the lash on everything. It's not a big deal since this engine's out, and it's not a big deal for us to keep turning it over to get to top dead center. We can make that happen. So we're not overly worried about trying to get everything done in one shot. So here we go. You ready for reinstall? Okay. Gonna make sure it fits like in the groove. They want it both. They have nope, up higher. Just this top groove. Might need to get a magnet to get that back. There you go.
Oh.
You see it?
So, that?
We'll put it snug on there.
No.
See if they go higher up. No? There you go. See if this makes that hissing noise. Yep. Still not giving up the ghost here. There we go. All right. Good. Hard. Put this back in place. This way. All right, ready? All right, here we go. Done. All right, so that's good enough for now. I think about an hour. It took about an hour for us to do 8 valves. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Difference is amazing. I mean, what came out of here doesn't show up well on video, but these, what are supposed to be rubber umbrella seals, they feel like plastic caps. They feel like hard plastic, right?
I thought that's what they were.
Yeah, like you can crack them. There's very, very little give. Every one of the O-rings was crispy, and there were a couple that were completely blasted apart. And I'd have to go back to our sheet, but from memory, I think the ones that were actually completely broken, the ones that were the worst, were the cylinders on the passenger side that were giving us the worst fits with the compression test. Not with the leak down, but with the actual compression test. So, doesn't surprise me. In fact, that makes me feel better to know that, like, we were able to find, I don't know if it's a smoking gun, but we were definitely able to find something wrong on those seals with the valves that were bad. I don't know if you guys caught me doing it.
Dropping everything?
Yeah, besides dropping everything, which I don't know if you caught, but aside from that, I was giving each one of the valves a wiggle once we had the springs and the keepers off, just to make sure that the guides are in place. Every one of them was pretty solid. So from what I read, the rule of thumb is if you can wiggle that valve around, if there's like visible play, when it's just sitting there free, then you probably have valve guide issues and now you need a valve job. These were not wiggling, so they stayed steady. So again, I'm still keeping optimistic about this thing. But that's enough for now because it's basically quiet hour now and I don't want to have the compressor running to keep going through this and to drive everybody in the house nuts. The dog is already beside himself. So we'll call this quits for now and we'll be back at it again tomorrow night. All right, guys, so we're back at it again. It is day 2. No Declan tonight. So Declan, believe it or not, has a very, very good excuse for missing this. He is taking his driver's ed classes. So that's something that he's got to do for pretty much every day for the next couple of weeks, at least the weekdays. So he's coming home right after school and then jumping right into those driver's ed classes. So I gave him a pass on this one since he's actually doing the due diligence to get to the point where he can actually drive this car. So just me working solo on this one, but he helped me do the other half, so now I can do this half smoothly. We're going to go ahead and replace the valve stem seals on this side, and then we're going to go ahead and at least try to lash a couple of these valves, just so that I can get the swing of it. Never done it before. I've read up on it. Like a lot of things, you can sort of intellectually and academically understand what you're supposed to do by reading it, but there's a lot of things that you don't really know until you get the feel. So that'll be a learning experience for me. So let's get started. The compressor is going to kick on and off while we do this. So probably there's going to be music playing in the bed of this instead of hearing me do the work. Now, one of the big things that I'm not sure came across in the first round when you saw us to the other half is just how stuck some of these keepers were to the valve stems. And it makes sense if you think about it. They're in constant pressure, constantly adhering to that valve stem. So those keepers and the valve stems themselves sort of become one unit and they get stuck. And the result is when you go to try to put the compressor on it to release the spring, the stem and the keeper moves with the spring. That's not what we want. Obviously, we want it to be able to come loose. So you just have to bang at it with a dead blow. We're trying to hit it directly on the stem. We don't want to hit anything off angle and try to break anything, but we're just trying to shock the thing loose to make sure that it breaks off. So you'll see me doing that a bunch. I'll wait till the last second before I hook up the air compressor to try to avoid the noise. We'll try to get this thing threaded on. So what we're doing, we're compressing this down so we get the full stem of this to show up. And an interesting tidbit that got missed when we did the first half of this was that this thing shipped with this stem in the wrong position. So there's two different types of threaded studs, two different sizes that it could go on. I'm suspecting big block, small block, but I don't know. Could be something different. I'm sure you guys will let me know. And I had the wrong one on there when it shipped, so we had to flip that around. But you thread that onto the stud, get this in place. And I'm just going to move this a little bit to see if it moves. And it does, in fact, not move. Let's get you to see that. When we go to depress this, you'll see that that valve stem is moving with the valve, right? Which is what it should do if a rocker is pressing down on it, but not what we want it to do in this instance. So we'll move this off to the side and give this a couple of bangs. See if that freed it. Nope. we're going to put the air in it. And notice when you put the compressed air in there, it can actually help with this knocking it loose. There we go. That knocked it loose. Take that off. Get you in here to see this. Totally loose. See how loose this is. Yeah, and it's just falling apart on me coming off. See that? Now, if I didn't explain it already, or if you don't know already, the whole reason I'm using compressed air is because we want to be able to get the cylinder full of air so that the valve doesn't drop through. The other method that you can do if you don't have compressed air is you can stuff rope inside the spark hole gap, the spark hole in the head, and sort of fill that gap in this cylinder between the piston and the valves with a soft rope so that the valve can't fall through. But certainly the air seems to be the easiest way to do it if you've got it accessible. A little magnet works great for grabbing the keepers when they come off. I've had a couple of them wander on me, but fortunately haven't lost any yet. It seems like our best case on some of these cylinders, or some of these valves, has been that the O-ring is intact, but it's so hard and so shot that it's just swinging around loose on the valve stem. So, tools for the job here: spring compressor. This actually mounts to the studs on your heads, threads right on, and then you lever it up and it pushes the valve spring down. Worth its weight. This was, I think, 50 bucks, 48 bucks, something like that. Managed to get it online, came pretty quick. I would say that you could use this whether this engine was in the car or not, and it's real simple. It's a quick movement once you thread it on. The other option out there for removing these things when you've got the heads on is sort of a universal spring compressor that kind of clamps down around the whole thing, and you screw it down onto the spring. So that's also possible, but I can tell you with how many of these things were stuck, with the keepers stuck to the valve springs, oh sorry, the keepers stuck to the valve spring and valve itself, that would have been a pain. It would have driven me nuts, because you would have gotten to the point where you just got tension on it, realized it was stuck, had to back the thing off again, and then had to pound it and try again. It would have taken me a lot longer to get through this. So this was definitely worth it. There may be some other versions and some other tools out there, and certainly if you're not dealing with a traditional overhead valve V8 like this, then there's different methods and different tools that you would use, but for you guys working with small blocks and big blocks, it does the trick. All right, so now we're going to put the rocker arms back on here, and then we'll start to lash a valve. So here we go. Time for me to try to set valve lash for the first time. So bear with me. It's a learning experience for all of us, but you know, you got to try this stuff. The valve seals weren't too hard, so you know, how hard could this be really? This used to be in the owner's manual of those cars, so I should be able to do it. So the method that I'm going to use to do this is a hydraulic flat tappet cam. And so these basically get set to basically zero lash until these push rods really don't turn anymore, or until they start feeling drag on them. So the way that we're going to do that is the EOIC method, which is exhaust opening, intake, close. It means that when the exhaust is opening, you set the lash on the intake, and when the intake is closing, you set the lash on the exhaust. You do that for each cylinder so that you don't have to worry about top dead center. As long as you have that system or that approach going on for each cylinder, you should be able to do this right. So I've got this motor turned over now so that the exhaust is just starting to open. So now I'm going to adjust the intake. And what I'm going to do here, and again, from the interwebs, is I am turning this at the same time that I'm tightening this nut at the same time that I'm turning the push rod. And I'm trying to feel when I start to get some drag, and there's some drag on there right now. So now, depending upon who you are and what you're reading, it's 1/4 to 3/4 of a turn of the wrench additional once you get to this point, once you start to feel that drag. I'm going to go with a 1/2 turn on this one. There we go. So I can still turn this push rod, but it takes some strength to turn it. Okay. And now we're going to rotate the engine again until the intake is closing. There we go. Intake starting to close. All right, just feeling drag, so we'll go a half turn. That's too much, I think. We're going to start that one over again. There's the drag. Yeah, that feels about right. And it looks like I have about the same amount of threads showing on each stud too, above the nut. So that's the way they were when I found them. So I'm trusting that that's the way it should be now. So I'm gonna feel like that's pretty good. Now I'm just gonna keep on going around and doing that to the rest of these. We should be good to go. All right, so that's it, guys. Pretty successful week. Hopefully you learned something from this. I know I did. A couple things that I picked up from this. First of all, don't be scared about this stuff. I was a little bit freaked out about the idea of changing these valve stem seals. Super easy job. Easy enough that I can tell you that if I have to do this again, I wouldn't care about doing this inside the motor. Might be a little awkward sort of leaning over the fender walls to get in there, but I would still do it. It's pretty simple to do if you have the right tool. This was not a difficult job at all, especially with compressed air. I do wish my compressor was a little bit of a bigger tank so it didn't have to run the whole time I was doing this, but not a big deal. I am not 100% confident in my valve lashing. So you guys will hopefully have seen what I did, and I'm sure will comment and tell me what I did wrong. I welcome it this time, especially. This is not going back together yet, so I've still got time to lash this again. I'm gonna read up a little bit more and watch a few more techniques and just make sure that I got this right. First time doing it, it's a little bit on the tricky side when it comes to feel, I'm finding. Knowing exactly when to stop, like when your push rod starts to feel that drag as you're turning it, that was a touch thing that I don't think I have the touch for yet. So I think I went a little bit too far in some cases and not quite far enough in other cases, and I'm not sure just how much that actually matters. So I'm going to check that out. But overall, again, the engine is staying pretty healthy as far as I'm concerned. I think we're in pretty good shape with this. So the next steps that we're going to be going through is to go ahead and change out this timing chain. That'll be on one of the next videos. And then we're going to, we've got a gasket kit coming in. We'll re-gasket this engine, replace some of the seals. We're going to replace the oil pump. I got a new one of those coming in because that's just easy enough. And we're going to affix the oil pickup screen to the pump because that fell off last time and I know that was causing me issues. So we're going to mechanically fasten that pickup screen to the pump to make sure that it doesn't do that again. So that'll be the next stuff coming up on this. In the meanwhile, I think for my own mental safety, I'm going to hop over to the Chevy and do a little bit of engine compartment refinishing just to take a quick break from this motor. And then we are going to start to clean this thing up as well. So stay tuned. Hope you're enjoying this so far. And as usual, if you guys see some errors that I did and some tips that you want to throw my way, please feel free to. And we'll see you again real soon. Keep throwing wrenches.